What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Podcast. Today, we have Gus Cabrera, the LBA president, Land Builders Association, with us. Gus, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having us. I'm a fan of the show. I'm an organic subscriber,
That's
and I
right.
followed you guys, you guys' podcasting career for a while, and I'm very impressed. And again, it's a pleasure to be on with you both.
Thank you again, Gus. Like Anthony mentioned, it's such a pleasure. We were just speaking about it off air that the last time we were at your office that, we had you on our radar and we're making it happen finally. But before we get into the meat of things, we usually like to introduce our guests with a couple warm up questions. And
Okay.
I am very excited about these couple questions, and I'm really interested to see what you have to say. So the first one is, what is the most embarrassing fashion trend you used to rock? I know you're a fashionable guy, so I'm looking
Well,
forward to what you got to say.
well, listen. I grew up in the '80s, so in the '80s, every day was a fashion faux pas. So every day was an embarrassing moment. So I don't know that I can point to one particular thing, but certainly there was quite a few. I think the funniest one, and it wasn't funny at the time, but looking back at it, I remember, like you guys, we grew up, in this town, not a lot of money, just kind of trying to work hard. So a lot of your clothing, particularly when it comes to dress wear, tends to be hand-me-downs or thrift shops or things of that nature. So I was invited to a New Year's party, and I remember all my friends were taking a suit or taking a jacket. I didn't have one, so I ended up borrowing one from somebody who was slightly larger than I was. Um, and the suit was certainly probably 10 years older in fashion than the current thing. So I showed up to this event with a oversized, thick gray single button jacket, some pants, and cowboy boots, which were the only formal
Oh,
type shoes I had. Right. So, by the way, I thought I was looking just right, but in the house that we were at, it had this long mirror, and as I walked by it,
Oh my
I
God.
caught myself in the reflection and realized that I looked like short, pretty close to. If it was colorful, it would have been a clown outfit. So, but like anything, it drives you. Those little experiences, they're funny now, embarrassing at the moment. But I do remember at that moment telling myself, you know, one day I'll afford the nice suit,
Mm,
or this will never happen again. And those are the little moments that stack up in your life and create that drive. So,
mm. Did your
but
wife
it was
meet you?
embarrassing. But it was embarrassing.
Well,
So,
did your wife meet you when you were wearing that outfit?
no, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. By the time
Oh,
my wife met me, I was back to. That was many years ago. I think I was just out of high school when that happened. So,
okay. Okay.
yeah, I've been a polo, and like I tell everybody, I think I own 12 suits. Six are gray and six are blue. So I try to eliminate that brain damage, the fashion brain damage, out of my
Yeah,
daily equation. So,
you're making up for it now. You're making up for
yeah,
it today. There we go.
yeah. Well, I'm more
Um,
boring now than I was then. That's for sure.
Awesome. Our second warm up question for you, Gus, is if you were famous, what would you be famous for?
Oh boy, that's a good one. I mean, I think if you would have asked me that question when I was 16 years old, I would have told you I want to be famous for being the starting catcher for the New York Yankees. Of course, you need talent for that, which is the big problem. Um, I think these days, I look up to folks that are intellectually driven. So I would love to be famous for being a writer or being somebody like that. I look at different folks in this community, David Lawrence. I look at individuals like that who really have married intellect and community activism. I think that, to me, that's more appealing than perhaps a guy who's got $100 million in the bank. So I think if I could point to a frivolous thing, all my life I've been really into weightlifting. It's the one part of my recreational life, if you will, that allows me to escape from the daily grind of business, of work, of things of that nature. So, maybe when I'm 60, I like to be famous for being able to, lift a combined big weight amount in the powerlifting world. So,
I look forward to seeing you in the CrossFit Games or the powerlifting tournaments.
yeah, I
We
don't know about
definitely
CrossFit. CrossFit is, that's way too advanced and way too much movement. I think if I can deadlift, squat, and bench, that's about as much as I'll do.
There
So,
we go.
that's a talent within itself. That's only
yeah,
superhumans are able to enter into those. But that's it, Gus. Thank you for coming. No, I'm kidding.
yeah,
That that
that
was
was quick.
the warm up round. You passed. Congratulations. Now we
Thank
start to
you.
get into the meat of things. And to start off, obviously, I want our listeners to get to know you a little bit better. Anthony mentioned you are the president of LBA, the Latin Builders Association, a huge organization down here in Miami, with developers, entrepreneurs, business owners, really focused around networking. You're also the managing director of Marin and Sons. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about you and how you were able to obtain those positions and your journey as to how you got to where you are.
Sure. So you mentioned the LBA first, so I'll go in your order. I think that the Land Builders Association is an institution that's been around for over 50 years and really founded out of a need that was created in the early 70s by a group of Cuban exiles at the time. And they were just trying to rebuild their lives after leaving Castro's communist Cuba and but they were also a little bit frustrated by the lack of opportunities in this town. So they banded together and created this association. As the years went by, the association continued to grow to what it is today. It's really a behemoth community group. I think Anthony attended our January luncheon that took place last week. We had over 400, close to 400 guests. We had the chairman of the county commission speaker as a speaker. We had a U.S. senator, Senator Rick Scott, as a speaker. So that speaks to the influence. So I'm very passionate and very excited and very humble to be the president of the OBA. And it's a big responsibility, but one that I embrace. On the day-to-day stuff, I actually have my own consulting firm. It's a company called Evergreen Group, and I am affiliated with Marin and Sons, and I try to help that entity on the day-to-day management. I still do a lot of my personal real estate on the side, which is really what drives my affiliation with the LBA. So how do you get here? I think in life everything is an evolution. You experience something that you can build on, and you try to build on it as much as possible. So I began my career out of college working for a company called Church and Tower. It's a small regional contractor. That company was the catalyst or the founding entity of what MasTec is today. MasTec is probably one of the largest companies that's headquarters in South Florida, a Fortune 500 company that does infrastructure work throughout the U.S. and even outside the U.S. So I was there for 18 years and then kind of went out on my own, and that's how I kind of found my way into the consulting world. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell, for the most part.
Gus, I remember you mentioned to me that your childhood, your early days in high school, going on to college were really important for you in shaping who you are today. Your mother had a big role in that. How did your early childhood play to who you are today? If it weren't for your early childhood, do you think you would still be where you are today, or do you think it made you who you are?
No, I think every experience is a break in the wall of your life, right? So I think part of what you try to do is learn from those experiences, and that can be good and bad. When I was 11 years old, I came from Cuba with my parents. So at a time where this was right a year before the Mariel boat lift, so there was obviously Cuban exiles in town, but you're at an age where where you come to a new country, so a new set of friends, and you're yourself trying to develop your own relationships. So it was kind of a little bit difficult, but at the same time, it was an ideal experience because it forces you to get to know different people. And then as you kind of get into middle school and high school, you utilize a lot of those skills, the ability to ingratiate yourself with others, the ability to listen to other folks, and the ability to get along with people and work within a team. Whether it be through sports or study groups or whatnot, and you begin to understand the importance of creating a bond with other folks, sharing opportunities. Thomas Jefferson used to say that a candle loses nothing of itself when it lights another candle, and I think that's something that I've tried to follow. Right, if there's something that I know that could help Anthony or can help Gabriel, I'm happy to share it. There is no cost associated with that back and forth. I think if anything, it helps you, and by helping you, you guys are in my orbit and I'm in your orbit. We help each other. So a lot of those early childhood foundational experiences, um, the sum of those parts is what helps you become who you are today, good, bad, or indifferent, right? So if those experiences were bad, I'm sure that would have affected me. But I look back in my life and how I got here and to where I got. Certainly, I wouldn't change a thing.
Absolutely, and you mentioned your early years, and Anthony also mentioned that your mom was had a pivotal role in your life. And as you just mentioned, if you had, some words of wisdom that you could pass on to me or Anthony or
Mhm.
anyone, you wouldn't skip the opportunity to do so. Was there anyone in particular when you were younger that you could say that maybe you had a mentor or maybe a father figure, a coach maybe that was able to speak those words of wisdom in your life when you were our age?
I think that's a good question. My father and my mother played an integral role, but they were also a little bit uh, restricted in some ways because when we came from Cuba, they had a language barrier, so they could only communicate in Spanish. So if I had a teacher conference or if I had something, I was always a translator. So they were no fault of their own. Actually, it's part of the exile experience, something very common in this town. So I don't know that I can point to one individual person. Certainly, there's been a group. I think and even when it comes to advice, um, you know, I have this conversation with other folks often. If they're a piece of advice, I don't know that there is ever a specific piece of advice that really moves you. I think it's an aggregate of conversations, of experiences, of quotes, of reading that you do that create and form your hypotheses or your view or your perspective, right? So I think if I could point to something, you know, from my youth, I would say it's always very important. It's important to listen when you're
Mm,
younger. It's important to listen. The smartest person in a room is typically the person that's the quietest because they know what they know and they know what everybody else is saying because everybody else is saying it. So
right.
the ability to listen, particularly at a young age, we all have a tendency when we're young to hurry up. We want to hurry up to get to the next step. We want to hurry up to accomplish something. Um, so understanding the combination of patience and listening. You guys are in your early 20s. Happy birthday, Anthony. I know you just turned
Thank you.
21.
Yeah.
You guys are in your early 20s. So it is impossible for you guys to acquire the wisdom, the experiences, and the knowledge that somebody that's twice your age has
Mm,
accomplished. It's physically impossible.
mm,
So the more that folks your age, and look, you guys are ahead of the curve. Certainly, when I was your age, I wasn't doing or chasing the initiatives you guys are. But
mm,
if you can listen, if you can take notes and take different perspectives, not
mhm,
there's never the true sign of intelligence is the ability to have two conflicting thoughts in your head and manage
mm,
them both. So that would be my biggest thing, and probably secondary to that is to try to be kind. I think
mm,
we live in a rough town, right? We live in a town that's
yeah.
in a hurry, that moves
Mm,
fast, and sometimes we forego the others, the empathy that we should all have for our personal advancement. So if you can take time and help somebody, just take a step and slow down a bit and just coach somebody, understanding that you're not going to get anything for it. I think
Yeah.
that's also helps form who you're going to be in the future.
Mm. Two great pieces of advice, listening and being kind. I think you're absolutely right. If we follow those two things, we'll get far in life, no matter who we are and what we do. I think those two things are crucial. But now shifting gears a little bit to our theme of the day, which is networking, Gus. You're what I would consider an expert networker. Um, I really, when I talk to people about networking, I always tell them that it's an art. It's really not as easy as saying, go out there and talk to people. That seems simple, but in practice, in reality, it's very difficult, and a lot of people struggle with how to network successfully. And we'll get into that now in a second. But before I ask you about how to network successfully, I want to ask you, Gus, when did you notice that networking was going to be a big part of your life? And is it a big part of your life?
Well, it absolutely is. I think it's whatever success I've achieved has been primarily due to my network, to my ability to create relationships, and that's how we, frankly, particularly in this town, that's what we advance, right? I think networking is an art form, to your point, and sometimes when we're younger, we're networking and we don't really understand that we're networking, but we're creating that foundation for networking. I think the to my earlier point, I think two of the things that helps a lot with networking is being able to listen and being able to be kind. Right. I think the earliest I can remember networking, I go back to middle school and high school. We were already networking then, where you were part of a baseball team or a basketball team or just a social group. You get to know different people. You get to know different people, and whether it was developing a relationship with somebody or having a friend that can help you meet somebody else or can help you connect with somebody else, things like that. That's networking. That's networking. So if you advance that into college, once you get into college, um, and you guys will experience it soon enough, right? When you start to think, what am I going to do after college? What do I want to do? And it's difficult to arrive at that decision just on your own. So what do? You talk to your friends. Hey, what are you going to do? What are you guys going to work on? Where you're thinking of going?
Yeah.
That's networking. That's
Mm.
you're interchanging ideas and thoughts, comparing notes to improve yourself. And maybe you have a friend that graduated a few years before and got a really good job, and he knows about a job opening that you're interested in, and he's able to get you there, or he or she is able to kind of connect you with that job. That's networking. So the next layer after that, you're already a professional and you want to advance your profession, whether it be self-employed, pursuing your own initiatives, or as part of a company. You attend social gatherings, and that's why you carry business cards in your pocket. That's why you are able to kind of engage with other folks in professional conversations, and hopefully end with, let me have your contact or your email, and I'd like to follow up on that. Those are all part of networking. And then once you get to a more experienced or older, for the lack of a better word, level, you find that those relationships can help you not only in the professional side, but the personal development as well, right? So I think networking is extremely important. I think the keys to networking for me, and based on my experience, and look, part of being the LBA, you're forced um, to lean into networking. That's what we do. At the end of the day, our association, what it does, it helps connect companies and individuals in a way that they can help each other from those connections that are created. I always say that the LBA is a lot like the App Store, right? Apple doesn't make any apps, but it creates this ecosystem where the developer and the consumer can come together
Yeah.
and develop a relationship, right? And so for me, the LBA, what I try to do is to create that ecosystem where a real estate professional can meet a construction professional and talk about doing business together, or a contracting vendor that does drywall can connect with a developer and talk about doing business together. That's networking. That's the professional, the ideal scenario for networking, where you can be exposed to different opportunities and different ideas. So you know, this town is run on relationships, and networking is the umbrella that encompasses what networking is all about. So it's very important.
Yeah, I love the analogy, the example that you gave of the App Store because it's really so true, right? And I know for Anthony and I, we'll talk about networking, and that word for some reason might rub people out, the wrong way. They might be a little intimidated to go network. But to your point, I think I've started networking since middle school or high school when I was playing basketball with friends, right? And those friends have grown to be entrepreneurs, business owners, parts of significant organizations that we can call on, have lunch. And even if it's just getting coffee with a friend, I think that's what is also considered and under that umbrella of networking. And I'm sure as the president of an organization like a lot of people look to you to set an example of what good networking looks like. And also in that position, I'm sure you've been, you've seen a lot of good networking and even a lot of bad networking. And my question to you and before we ask you how to network successfully, I want to ask you, what would you say is an example of, bad networking? What are some mistakes that you've seen people do over the course of your career, for young people to really just tune in and to really learn from those mistakes?
Very good question. I think, unfortunately, sometimes networking or just being part of a group dynamics, you almost have to make some mistakes to learn from them. But certainly, I think one of the keys to successful networking is understanding that networking occurs first and foremost on a one-on-one basis. Even though you're in a group with, maybe you're in a room with 100 people, and of those 100 people, there's 20 that you really want to meet, right? Um, but when you have the conversation with that person, it happens one-on-one. Um, the thing that I try to do myself in those scenarios, and that I've tried to do for a long time, is to be in the moment, be engaged in that conversation. So if I'm talking to Anthony because I want to talk to Anthony in a networking setting, I want to make sure that I'm looking him in the eyes, that I'm listening to what he has to say, that I'm paying attention, and that he recognizes that I'm paying attention. I'm not a big fan of the person who speaks with you and is looking over your shoulder for the next person they want to talk to, because I think that person isn't really listening to you. So, and I know it can be difficult because when we have a lot of folks, and maybe a limited amount of time, you're excited. You wanna shake hands and meet and talk to as many people as you can. But my advice, or at least my caution on what bad networking is if you don't allow yourself to be in the moment in that conversation with that individual that you're talking to. One, you come across as somebody who's really not that interested in what in that conversation. And number two, I think it's rude. I think it speaks to lack of professionalism or lack of professional charisma to a certain extent. So bad networking happens when you try to do too much and you try to look beyond the people that you're networking with.
Mm. Very good tips there. Very good advice. I think something that we've all experienced. I can. Some people pop to the head where that has happened before when I'm having a conversation with them, but they're kind of wandering around, and I can tell that they're not fully present, and that
Right.
we've spoken to that before about being fully present in everything that you do. Of course, networking, you want to be fully present for the person who you're speaking with. Now, from personal experience, Gus, when I got to UF, I got here in August, I had a hard time trying to find my network, right? It's such a huge university, from going to Miami Dade to UF, a new city that I've never been a part of. I honestly, I struggled finding my niche, my group. Who am I going to be with around here? So I joined clubs and organizations. None of them were good in the beginning. None of them were what I was looking for. So I really had a hard time networking here at UF, and it's still an uphill battle. I'm now I'm now getting to the place where I'm getting comfortable, where I'm finding my network, where I'm finding people like myself. But it's been difficult. It's been very difficult. So my question, Gus, is for young professionals who are listening to this right now, who are listening to you, who have zero connections. They have no connections. They've never networked professionally in their life before. How can they get started? Like, where does someone with zero connections, who now knows how to network, right? Because you just shared it with us, but who has zero connections, how or where can they get started?
Well, first of all, I dismiss the notion of you not doing well at networking because I know you, and I know that you talk to everybody, and you always have that jovial approach and big smile. So I think you're being over dramatic, as I know that you pick up networking very quickly and very
Yeah,
efficiently and very effectively. So I
thank you.
appreciate the setup, but
Yeah,
I think there's a couple of things that I would kind of share. Is number one, I think it's great and ideal to lean into the most uncomfortableness you could possibly find. So if you find somebody that doesn't look like you, find somebody that's doing something different than you, and try to engage with those conversations. I think sometimes we lean into our comfort zones, and Gabriel, you mentioned basketball, right? So if you wanted to pick up if you wanted to play sports or something, you're going to go to a basketball court. That's what you're comfortable with. But I would, challenge you guys to lean into something that you're not particularly comfortable with, or something that you haven't experienced before. If it's folks that think differently than you, folks that are maybe are interested in things that are different than what you're interested in, allow yourself to connect with those individuals, or challenge yourself to connect with those individuals, because what you're going to do is you're going to considerably spread your net, your your personal network. If all we want to do is hang out with folks that look like us or do what we do, that's a narrow path. And sometimes you'll find that there's a lot more, we have a lot more in common with other people that may not be doing what we do or may not look like us than we think. So my if I could talk to my younger self, I would tell my younger self, hey, expose yourself to different things, expose yourself to different types of people that think differently, that are pursuing different professional path, that have different circles. Because all I'm going to do with those initiatives is, one, expand my network, and two, learn how to talk to people that are learn how to talk to everybody. There's nothing funner, I think, on when you're doing networking, that when you meet somebody that you may not think you have anything in common with, and after a 2 minute conversation, you have a lot in common with. I think that's a pleasant surprise. And those are the fun little games that I play in my head in networking settings, right? I talk to different people. I wonder what I have in common with that person. I bet I can have a conversation with that person. I bet I can get that person's business card. I bet I'm going to impress that person. Those are the types of, kind of catalysts that I use for conversations.
Absolutely. And that's something that Anthony and I speak on so much, on this podcast. And part of the reason why we started this podcast in the first place, because, we weren't comfortable with getting in front of the mic or getting in front of a camera and
Right.
speaking. But, you know, everything, the comfort zone is really where you stay to just be straight and narrow. You're not really not going to go anywhere by staying there. And I wanted to ask you, as we sort of wrap up here, in your years of experience through networking, through LBA, through all your, your different positions in your career, have you ever gotten comfortable with networking, or do you still show up to a networking event today and you still got, the jitters and the butterflies? Do you have like a guest list that you go to that you asked to prior? What are some things that you can get yourself comfortable in the moment, especially for someone listening to this, that the first step is just getting there? I feel like that's really what people struggle with, especially our age, that they don't even want to leave the car, right? They might drive to the location, but they turn right back around because they're just so nervous, so uncomfortable. What is something that they can do to make themselves comfortable in those situations?
Sure. So I think that great question, and actually speaks to something that's very important, right? The ability to creating the courage to have those conversations, and everybody goes through that. I've gone through that. I still go through that. I'm sure if you're trying to, particularly when you're coming into a new group, it can be intimidating. It can be overwhelming. Um, so what I try to do, even to this day, is I'm going to tell myself that number one, I'm going to speak to at least 20 people, right? I'm going to speak to a certain number. I'm gonna do that. Another thing that I like to do is if it's a networking event that is, let's use the LBA as an example, right? We know the LBA is a group that is interested in construction, in the construction industry, in the building industry, in real estate, and things of that nature. I want to be prepared, right? I think if we are having a conversation about real estate, and I don't know anything about real estate, not even the most fundamental of issues, and I can't hold a conversation, then that conversation is not going to go anywhere. So I think it's important to be worldly in the sense of, read, people need to read the newspaper every day to know what's going on. Go on blogs, go on digital subscriptions and read what's going on about an industry, about local events and things of that nature. I think prepare yourself as much as possible to be able to have those conversations. I think that's part of the homework. I think that's part of the preparation that we all need to do to be able to hold a conversation on different topics. I'm an avid reader. I like to read. My goal has always been to read, a book a month. I don't always get there, but I'm constantly reading. I'm constantly trying to learn because you never know when the conversation pops up about, you know, Southeast and Asian politics, and you may know a thing or two about that. And again, the ability to hold that conversation is what creates that connection and hopefully, augments your network. So,
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is to be present, as you guys have said, to understand that other people are nervous as well.
Mm,
But if you come across as a likable person, if you don't have any walls or are too defensive,
mm,
9 times out of 10, you'll get good feedback.
mm. Very important. So many good gems, so many good tips, Gus, that you gave us about networking. And finally, the last question to wrap everything up, to kind of sum everything up that we've talked about. What is the mindset that young folks, people listening to this, should have? What is the mindset that people should have today?
Listen, I think there's so many things. If I could point to one, I think you have to have when you're young, you're in a hurry to not be young anymore. I would say, and your generation is one that demands immediate response to everything they do, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's different than how I was. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's important to be ambitious. But if I could tell you one thing, I think number one, you know, understand that there is a path. Understand that you have to create your own path, and understand that that may take some time. I think it's very important to be positive with yourself. If I could point to one thing, is develop that confidence in yourself. And how do you develop that confidence? Is prepare yourself. Learn. Gandhi has a great line that says, "Live as if you're going to die tomorrow, but learn as if you're going to live forever." You should always be learning. You should always be looking for ways to better yourselves. You should always be looking for ways to do more and learn about things and try to do those things. But at the same time, you should always also develop confidence from yourself and be positive about what you're doing. I think because we live in a world that demands immediate satisfaction or calls for that, I'm fearful that those individuals or those young people that don't see that immediate positive feedback can see it as something negative, and then can kind of go down a dark hole. So I think having the patience, having understanding that no one but you can build your path to success. So you have to be every day working at it, but also being positive and being enthusiastic about what today will bring and what tomorrow will bring. I think those are keys to a happy life. And sometimes a happy life doesn't mean having $100 million in the bank. I'm certainly it won't hurt to have $100 million in the bank. But I think it's more important to be comfortable with yourself, to be happy with yourself, to wake up every day wanting to learn more, wanting to meet new people, wanting to do more. I think if you can master that, or not master that, but understand that and embrace that, I think it leads to a happy life.
Definitely. Like Anthony mentioned, so many words of wisdom, so many gems in this episode. I'm definitely gonna go back and listen to it myself. And you touched on it now, and I'm just gonna touch on it for a second. That especially in this generation, this society of instant gratification, it's so important that for us young people specifically to listen to people like like you mentioned, people that are always talking, never have a chance to listen. And I think that's one thing that people can definitely take away, and all the other things that we spoke about: networking, get out there, get uncomfortable, just make yourselves present in the moment. And I think people will definitely see a change in their life and in their careers. Well, Gus, thank you so much for coming on. Before we go, can you let our listeners know where they can find you on LinkedIn? How can they learn more about LBA, all that good stuff?
Well, on the LBA front, we have a great, our website is lbaorg.com. We have the ability to sign up to receive our newsletter and receive our email distribution. Um, so I would encourage you guys to, we're very visible. We're in LinkedIn, we're in Instagram, we're in Facebook, and all the social media channels. Sign up, tune in, and we'll do everything to connect with you. And obviously, in the website, our contact information is on there. We have a staff that can answer a lot of your questions. For me personally, I'm on LinkedIn. I would tell you my handle. I don't even know it, but you type in my name and my ugly mug
There
will
you go.
pop up.
Yeah.
Same thing on Instagram. I don't post much, but I certainly through the LBA we do post a lot. So
Yeah.
and I'm around. I mean, Anthony knows how to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
If anybody's interested in being part of the LBA, please reach out to me. You can reach me via email. My email is easy as gus.cabrera@me.com. Very easy to get a hold of me, and I will certainly respond. I want to thank you guys. This is a lot of fun. I think what you guys are
Yeah.
doing is really great, and Joe Rogan has a very famous podcast that began as not such a famous podcast. So
Mm.
I think in a couple of years, you guys are going to be giving him a run for his money. So just remember to Photoshop the forehead glare if you can. You know,
We'll
so
work on it.
and hopefully we can. I know that I see Anthony in person a lot of times. Gabe, you're always
Yes.
welcome to come by and we can talk. And hopefully you guys will invite me back.
Of
Absolutely. No,
course.
thank you so much, Gus. Actually, it's crazy when you mentioned the newsletter from LBA. I just got it. I just got an email of the
Perfect.
newsletter.
Awesome.
So there you go.
Perfectly timed. Perfectly
Perfectly
timed.
timed. Yeah, this episode is sponsored by LBA. So
There we go.
thank you so much, Gus. I appreciate your
Thank
time,
you.
and thank
My
you
pleasure.
for your leadership in LBA and for your mentorship as well.
Thank you, guys. Look forward to hearing from you guys more.
Thank you.
Thank you.